So 20-minute dev vid, they updated people on the state of the game. I haven't heard the best reactions from the community as a whole, but I've heard some interesting ones at the least.
Why do we have to wait until June?
Get into it
Why
here.
has there been such a lack
Games
of
Developer
investment
Conference in San
in
Francisco.
community
Yeah, so
capital? Can
they
we please get an
went
update on
from
cross-server
like Orange
agreements?
County to
While
San
that
Fran
program
was,
is
or Irvine to San Fran was the how far they had to travel. Which isn't like it's far. It's a few hours. Like probably a plane flight.
Talk about all things New World. Today we're in San Francisco at the Game Developers Conference doing it on location. And it's a Q&A episode. I'm here with Katie and Scott, who you know really well by now.
I think they're having
Bring
a
on
good
the
time
questions,
though.
Melvin.
Well, first things first, is there any news on Season 5 and its release?
Yes, Season 5 will be released April 2nd.
Okay.
There we
So
go.
that's it.
Not on
No
April 1st. It's not a
context for me.
joke.
All right. We are filming this right after a
Except
Game
Season
Developer
5's
Conference panel
content
we
is
hosted titled
not
The Power of
that
Community That Can
insane.
Create
It's
Better Games.
okay. The
And right
OPR
now,
changes I
would
think the
describe
biggest ones.
temperature is kind of hot, right? There are many concerns that we are giving up on the game, that we don't care, that we aren't communicating enough about, our delayed Season 5 release. The list is extensive. So
Yeah, I mean, to give like context, like we are in the 3rd month of the year. Okay, ignore all the Windows security stuff I have popping up. We're in the 3rd month of the year, and I don't think we've had a single dev update this year. Turn it up a little? Okay. But
in the spirit,
there's just not been a lot of feedback as a whole
what can you
in
tell
terms of
us?
communication.
Why do we have to wait until June? And will there be any news about upcoming features?
Love that for you guys. I mean, they're just saying,
first,
wait till June,
nobody
wait
is
till
giving up
June,
on
wait
the
till
game.
June. Like, that's been the sentiment over and over and over again. And now at this point, it feels like it's not going to be June. It's going to be July. It's going to be September. Like, it's just like, wait. And, like, people are leaving this game for other games that are coming out that are relatively good games, and they're not coming back. That being said, I think that they did have to take time to work on tech because the game does not have repetitive content right now that's sustainable. The only long-term repetitive content that people like right now from a PvP perspective are OPRs and wars. PvE, the mutations, I think are somewhat liked, but not super liked considering the fact that I have, like a solid 10 to 40 minute queues for most of the mutations I do on East for M1 and M2. So, like, considering the queue times are so long for mutations compared to OPR, they would suggest that OPR is a little bit more popular at the moment.
We can't give you the information that you want. We'd love to talk about this, but sometimes you have to look at what's best for the long-term health of the game against some of the short-term gains. And it's awful, and I know it's not what you want to hear. That said, we're not allowed to give any real details about what's coming out or what we're going to announce in June.
So basically, they're trying to say we have a lot to talk about in June, but we can't talk about anything. It's like this kind of happened with the last expansion a bit, where they didn't want to talk about stuff, and then they started leaking stuff maybe 2 weeks before, a week before, like kind of thing, and then that built up hype so that people actually like bought the expansion, came back to the game. So I think they're trying to do like a hype cycle kind of thing with marketing here, but like. Yeah, there won't be a long term of the game because there won't be a game in the long term. Yeah, that's the kind of the unfortunate part. This is the unfortunate thing to Google. But I think everyone is, well, we don't even have to look at the worlds. You can just look at over the last year per se, and then, or maybe even like 6 months, and you can just see it's a steady decline since the expansion came out, to the point now where we're peaking at sub 10K. I think we all thought that this would never get below like 12K, and now it's at like 8 to 10K because, new games have come out. And the thing is with AGS's timeline for June, if that gets pushed back, you're directly competing with Ashes of Creation Alpha, which I know a lot of people from New World are going to be trying because it's another MMO. So it's a very short window that they have to like captivate the audience.
You have a kind of an idea on what's coming.
All right.
I wonder what their
So
expected
eagle-eyed viewers
versus
could be looking for
rate of return for
little
Crossroad
clues here and there.
Expeditions was.
Absolutely, there's going to be some clues. There might even be one.
Yeah, it's just,
it might
it's a
even be
little
one
late
that might
was
be
the
around.
problem.
What is Amazon Games doing with these delays?
We hear you loud and clear on, like, we've not had a great history of releases being clean, and we told you it was a focus of ours, and then we had the season.
Has there been one release that was clean? I hate to be that guy. I don't think there's been a single release that was clean. Like, I don't know. Brim was pretty clean. I think that was it. I think it was mostly Brim, and even Brim had some bugs that were like relatively game breaking at the time. I think we had another gold dupe around that time as well. But Brim was probably peak in terms of like content releases, and it hasn't been that great ever since.
Season 4, which we weren't proud of. we're taking the time here to try and get it right. And let's not forget, we just
Expeditions were
completely
ruined
changed
by
the
bound to
entire
player,
online
loot
system in
biasing,
our
no use for dark
organization.
matter. Yep.
Everything's all
If they
navigated in
fix that,
combat.
they'd be pretty popular right now, but they
And there
didn't,
were
so there's
problems.
no
We
reason
found
to
a
do
lot
it
of
once you have your
PVR. We
gear,
wanna address as
basically.
many of those as we can. We're not going to get all of them, but we are prioritizing the ones that could be exploitive in gameplay. It's super important. And this is a new process that we've got to give it a shot, and we need to get better. And we're really doing everything we can to make season 5 a
You got to respect them though for sticking to their guns. Like, they definitely could have released season 5. It would have had some pretty bad things. Like, the amulet would not have been usable at all by any class in the game, whatsoever. And the combat would have been awful. And people, honestly, I think if they released season 5 2 weeks ago, I think more people would have left the game than people that stayed right now. Because the best part about New World is how it feels in terms of combat. And like, anyone that plays New World can tell you that. And if they pushed it, that could have been really, really bad. Like, they definitely had to delay that.
clean release.
All right, why?
It's just
has
not
there
a
been
fun
such
call
a
to
lack of
make.
investment into the PvP aspect
I feel like
of
this
our
is just
game?
bad
Is it
PR/marketing,
down
to be
resource
honest. I
management?
mean, it is,
Yeah,
but
so before we launched,
the-
like way back,
it's
we wrote
definitely not the
first
strong
listing,
suit of the studio.
and we listened to the
It's
players at that time, and we adjusted.
it's
and made
better
sure
than
we
some. Like, at least they
based on
communicate.
that feedback. And what we see is the majority of our players are PvE focused. We do have PvP players though, and we do have different modes for them. And moving
Yeah.
forward, it's definitely something that we want to invest in.
I think it's pretty easy to agree that most of the players are PvE focused at this point. I think if you look at streamers that return to the game, like, you think about who they pull back to the game when they do one of these events, right? The main guy that comes to mind that was kind of the king of New World, well, there's two people. There is Asmongold and there is Shroud. Those are the two people that basically hype up New World every time it comes around. They're like, New World has potential. And then they'll stop there. They'll say New World has potential, and they'll stop there because New World has not executed on a potential whatsoever. But Shroud likes PvP. A lot of people that come back when Shroud comes back come to play the PvP. Like, and you have to PvE to get the gear for PvP as well, versus you don't really have to PvP to get PvE gear, since the best DPS build in the game is still a Rapier build for single target. There are really good PvP pieces that you should do for PvP to use in PvE, but I would not say this game is quite a PvX game. It's more of a PvE plus PvP, which I think explains this more so.
Well,
Shroud's
on that
Greatsword
note,
Fire Staff
I know you
build or
can't talk
whatever.
about
I mean,
upcoming
yeah,
content, but
this
can
like
you at least say,
creativity, it was
yes,
stupid.
PvP is
Asmongold
coming,
tried to
maybe
PvP,
you
he didn't
want,
try
but
to
we
focus
need
on
something.
PvE. He played a little bit of
Yes, we're working
PvE
on
and moved
something
on.
for PvP that's pretty darn big part of the June announcement. We can't wait to share it with you. If I could tell you today, I would. I'm really excited about it.
Okay.
Say
Well, can we
PvP
please
and
get an
PvE
update on
again?
cross-server 3v3?
It's too complicated,
We
man.
will get
I'm gonna
them
get
in
mixed up.
2024.
Working on PvP
Alright.
updates to
Big
the combat
secret.
system,
Why is it
other
a secret?
exciting
I touched on
additions
this
to
in the beginning,
content that we're
sometimes you
super
have to
excited
do
to
what's best
reveal
for the
in
long-term
June.
health of the game
It's
or the
infinitely
short-term health.
definitely
We have
better
different
than, yeah, bro,
information
trust
than you
me.
all have on that,
Bro,
and
we
we
can't
can't
wait to
share
talk
it.
about till
Are you gonna
June.
be more
Yeah,
available
it
to make
is.
the announcement?
They're doing a good job at sounding excited. I'll give them that.
It's a secret.
A long
Asmo
time
is solely
ago, we got a
PvE?
small peek at
He did 3v3. He did 3v3 with a taunt gem in his Warhammer, remember? It was kind of infamous. But yeah, he is definitely majority like PvE, but he did PvP as well.
daggers as a weapon in New World. Is that
He
still
did 3v3
happening,
for
or at least a
Serenity.
possibility?
We are not working on daggers.
Any planned update to OPR? Honestly, at
And
this point, just a
there,
new map will not cut it. It needs a bigger update.
and everyone just cried. Because daggers have been in the game since launch, and they are not being worked on at this point. And you would hope that June will have another weapon, because it's been 6 months of a reworked combat system. It's supposedly supposed to be a lot easier to work on weapons. But I wouldn't be surprised at the combat, like, if a new weapon didn't come out June and it came out like 2 or 3 months later, because this new combat system just came out and they're gonna have to iron everything out with the new weapon too. So we have no OPR map, we have no new weapon, and we're told that something amazing is gonna happen in June, which doesn't sound great, like, it's kind of like saying we promise that there's gonna be something, but it's nothing that you hoped for. Like, that's the part that I think the community struggles with, and where the divide is. Like, it's brutal. Like, even from a PvP or PvE perspective, like, if they were to release a new expedition, it literally would not matter. Because people play the expedition for, like, just a little bit, like maybe a week or two, and then they'll just not play it again because the mutation just rotated, and they won't see it again for another, 6 weeks or something like that. But I don't know. Like, the trust issues, yeah, pretty much. And the trust issues stem from the past, right? Unfortunately, AGS has like had to focus on short-term goals, and it just hasn't delivered. So we have like trust issues inherent with the
than just a new map.
development of the game as a whole.
3 answers ago, we're doing a big investment in PvP. It is not an OPR map, but I think it'll satiate the PvP players.
The one thing at this, like, if it's the island that was teased on the PTR, like, I'm sorry, that's not gonna cut it. But they seem to be teasing some sort of like open world FFA like game mode to some degree, and it seemed like that was not gonna be it. The only bright side of FFA, in my opinion, is it means that you're not forced to like have a healer build, except healer builds will probably be better in a hybrid format than any other build if it was FFA, to be honest, but like it did not seem like that would be a great way to go. How the fuck can they not have a release of a new OPR map in 3 years? Can anyone see how brain dead it is? They're so out of touch. It's because they don't think adding a new map is new content. Like, this is not a... It's very clearly not a PvP-focused studio whatsoever. And the game is not identified but to be a PvP game. They're trying to cater to the PvE audience, and... they realistically, if you want to go down the map route, you might need to add like 3 or 4 maps. Like, in their mind, OPR is League of Legends. League of Legends hasn't released a new map ever, right? They've just added like skins if you want that, or like different cosmetics for it. But the map itself has remained the same, and that's the perspective that the devs are coming at it. You see the references to League of Legends very clearly with like the Brute and the Baron, like being kind of those mid bosses that everyone fights for. The map is laid out very similar to League of Legends. It's very clearly inspired by the Riot kind of stuff, but with more base building. That comparison would work if OPR was the entire game. It's not. Yeah.
Low player count, season 5 delayed, since not being heard.
If they reskinned it or changed the mobs out, I'd be happy. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like they're going for the high hanging fruit. They definitely could go for low hanging fruit there.
Nothing but radio silence from the devs.
So we've talked about this a few times. Like, it's not a lack of effort. It's not a lack of desire. We would love to be telling you everything we're doing, but it's not best for the long-term health of the game right now. And as soon as we can in June, we will. But we do understand that you need to.
Yeah,
I want to know more
I mean, this will be interesting.
Outside of the
We've kind of talked about this, but this is the ultimate test of, is New World a seasonal game? Like, you go back to the thing that no one wants to go back for. If we look at a year, there tends to be peaks and troughs. If we go to all time, there tends to be a peak. There's a long time where the game slowly dies, and then there's a peak, and then the game slowly dies, and a peak, and then the game slowly dies, and we're gonna have another peak in theory. The question is that peak good enough? We basically have a peak every single time, September, October range. Like once a year is like where something big will get dropped and the population tends to resurgence. But as of recent, like there just hasn't been an update that I think has brought people back in a very, very long time. And there won't be one for another 3 months.
Try to find ways to give
Overwatch traumatized me. Apex is a dumpster fire. Path of Exile community is perma miserable. Newer community has trust issues. We're all hurting together. Yeah, pretty much. Unless you're a Riot gamer, in which case you're probably having a pretty good time.
Included some of our playtime, and as far as leadership team, besides the new guy who only has about 100 hours, all of us are over 1,000. One of us is over 3,000. But yeah, so we do play.
Some people were like, you only have 3,000 hours. That's actually like a considerable amount. Like if I look at my Steam, like for New World, like I think I only have like 4,000 hours. But the thing is like there's a difference between a PvP player and a PvE player's terms of hours. Because while there might be 4,000 hours here, I guarantee it's closer to 5,000 or 6,000 if you take into account the amount of VODs I've looked at. An amount I've done like outside of actually in the game.
That the majority of devs,
right, employees actually play the game. Yeah, they do. It's. I mean, you hope people have drive to improve the game that they play, but
I haven't really logged into that character in a while.
You think about like one of the dev videos, or like one of the devs here, like they might. I think at one point here they might tease like someone plays in War or something like that. There's one dev guy that we know that played in War back in the day. He doesn't play in War now, and. Like, to be honest, none of them probably can play in War at this point. Like, it's too competitive because the servers have shrunk so much. At the beginning of the game, there were so many servers it was very easy to get involved with it. But the struggle for a lot of people is, there's 2 servers now. If you're not the top end of War players, you do not have a War slot at this point. If you're a new player, the only chance you have of getting a War slot is if you go to a fresh start server, and if you didn't know that before you made your character, you're kind of hosed.
That's my primary.
League is
Yeah,
getting a new
it's
engine, new hardware rework, graphics rehaul, etc. in 2025. Valorant regularly updated. Yeah, Riot does a very,
Yeah, Isabella
very
was
good
my
job
first
with their
start role.
games.
There
I
was a
think
lot of fun.
Overwatch has done a
But I
pretty
went
good
back to
job
the
too
game
as of recent, but hasn't historically.
critically
Like the
important
last
for everyone
like
on the dev team to
3
play
months for
really
Overwatch have been
talk
very,
about
very
it. This is
successful.
like, there's one takeaway: to get your team to play the game. Otherwise, we can't have authentic conversations with the players. It's impossible.
Are there any plans to improve the town buffs? I would
All right,
really love to
Jake.
see the ability to request or personally
Also,
purchase.
they need to do a better job wearing these names. I know like every single person here that's asking the question off their Discord profile and off the name that's present. Like it's actually like hilarious.
Them.
Right now, there's no, that's not in the works.
Are there plans to be more aggressive
And there's Shoddy there. We played against Shoddy last war. Shoddy's a pretty good IGVG player. Shout out to Shoddy.
with PvP balance? The PvP balancing was implemented,
It's
but
totally
isn't being
readable.
adjusted
It's
as much as one
horrible.
would have thought. Is there plans to adjust them more to prevent metas in PvP becoming too stale or boring?
Dude, this is the worst defender. Go back to Shoddy's. Dude, Shoddy's is so obvious. Like this is the most like iconic like Discord like icon ever. Like, and it's totally readable too. Like if we get rid of the closed captions or whatever, like this is totally readable. Like it's not even photoshopped out. Like I could do a better job photoshopping that, and I learned how to Photoshop myself. Like I didn't take it from a class or anything like that. I don't have a degree in that. If they blurred it 3 more times, I could still tell. Yeah, I mean, I know they're trying to like be like, hey, we this is a real person, but there's a line between it's a real person and hey, we know that guy and we can yell at them afterward if they ask the stupid question, and it's kind of towards the latter half. That being said, these people have asked decent questions,
Well, I think,
and they're not
every patch has got
dodging
things
the
that have
important ones
balance
as much as they
changes
used to.
incorporated into them. And the bigger patches, will.
Do they think
will
there's enough
run the
people
new web
playing this
server.
game that's enough to hide their
So that's
identity?
something that our
Oh
combat team is always
god.
looking at and always trying to balance, especially when there's exploits. Then we'll hotfix for that because we know that
See, there's a difference between what we would consider an exploit and what a dev would consider an exploit. I would consider things like the entirety of the artifact fire staff not working, the entirety of the artifact void gauntlet not working because of split stat scaling that's supposed to be inherent to the weapon. So dots basically don't tick for the appropriate damage that they should if you try to take advantage of the artifact, which is supposed to scale with a different attribute. I think Abyss is the same way as well. Like all those dots that come from those weapons just don't work, and that's been a bug for a very, very long time. There's a lot of other bugs like that. Like you think about Bow with the animation cancel. They fixed that, and another animation cancel exploit was found within an hour. Like, it's embarrassing. It took an hour. Like, I'm not talking about, like, people with early access. No, some dude downloaded the OPR, booted up New World, was like, oh, shoot, this exploit's fixed. Let's see if we could fix or replicate it. And they found another one within an hour, and now everyone in the PvP community is using that one, too. Like,
that kind of like exploitative gameplay. Like,
it's just painful, man. That took 2 to 3 months to fix, and it gets solved within an hour from a PvP community standpoint. And if you're not using that on Bow, you're at a severe disadvantage.
That gives us time to really sit with whatever the new meta is.
I go back to my previous point, they're not in the office doing the interviews, so the community can't send a missile to the HQ. They've done it before, and also the office is kind of public, because you can look it up if you're trying to look down the career side. There's one thing though from a dev video. Sorry, I keep talking over these guys and I feel bad. From a dev perspective, like someone told me to look at the job listings for here at one point because they're like, oh, you should work on the QA team. So I looked at the QA team and kind of investigated that. Right? I could maybe even pull it up here. I probably don't want to do that. Yeah, I probably don't want to do that. But the way that they structure their department there is they're trying to spread it amongst multiple games. That part I could look up. If we look up Amazon Game Studio games, basically, and then we can see what they actually are creating right now, and this is the wrong thing because there's too many studios with AGS. If we look at like what games they support, their QA, and I imagine this is for a lot of other teams, they're spread amongst multiple games right now. So this isn't perfect. I think we go to our games, it will show it. So they have New World, right? They have Lost Ark. These are 2 incredibly different games, and our QA is supposed to be troubleshooting both. Also Throne of Liberty, that's basically out at this point, early beta. Then they have this game, they have Lord of the Rings, and they have like this one other game. Their QA is supposed to be QAing all of these games. So their QA is generalist. None of them are specialists. You don't have anyone that's like, hey, I troubleshoot things related to New World. You know, like I figured out that this Phoenix amulet could be exploited by people that run the Ice Gauntlet, which the community figured out within 30 minutes of the PTR going live. Like, they don't have people with that kind of expertise, and they're just being basically told, like, hey, you finished your stuff for New World? Good, we need you to go work for Lost Ark now. Hey, you finished your stuff for Lost Ark? Good, we need to go work for Throne and Liberty. Now, I don't know if this is better than, like, the other strategy some companies use where they, like, offshore stuff to, like, India. They're trying to save money or something like that. I'm using India as an example, but there's other countries too. But it's very apparent that the skill set is not unique to New World in terms of specialization, and that would come from a corporate perspective, from someone saying, hey, we could save costs and have our QA work on 5 different games at the same time, rather than just having QA that's specialized to each game. The devs' history all failed projects. Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, none of these games have done historically super well. AGS tends to buy big titles, and they tend to not do as well in NA. But they at least have good launches. You got to give that out for that, and they're profitable. But that's like the concern I have is, as a whole, from a dev perspective, it doesn't seem like they have resources dedicated to New World to solve problems that might be occurring. From a high level perspective, when I look at this, money trumps on ball. Yep.
And, you know, take a look at the patch notes for Season 5. Like Katie said, April 2nd, so there'll be big changes there. And then
not really,
I think the next
but
balance of
yeah,
power is
kind
gonna
of.
be a couple weeks after that releases, right, Mike?
The biggest change for Season 5, to be honest, is probably them adding mounts to OPR, which is literally just flipping one tag. Like, it does not take 3 months to put that in. It took, like, literally no time at all. Like, the artifact changes are not that impactful, to be honest. I don't see any of the artifacts that are being added, or they're going to be used a lot. There's like 2 that look usable, and all the rest are just completely outclassed because they haven't balanced previous artifacts. Like, I kind of miss Dave balancing stuff like every other week. It feels like we've been way too long without a balance patch, and it kind of shows in terms of the numbers.
That's right. We looked at all the feedback for Balance of Power from last
It's been
time.
4
We wanted
years
to,
since
you know,
Zero QA
keep
with the
iterating
actual
on this and
PvP
improving it.
core.
So the next episode of Balance of Power will launch a few weeks after Season 5 is out.
Yeah, I would just add on.
I mean,
my last answer. The majority of
it doesn't help too that they're QA. They're all located in one office in Seattle, Washington, I believe, and you can't apply for positions outside of there. So if you're someone that works in Orange County, like these devs do, you can't actually work in QA and work for AGS at that point. You have to work in Seattle, Washington. Otherwise, you just have to basically not apply. Like, you can't take the job. I'll get to the song request after the video.
Plays the game actively as PvP players in live.
Nairo.
So they are in tune with what's going on there.
What content do the devs not enjoy or dislike and or want to change as a player, not a dev? As the player base has complaints,
That's a good
the
question.
devs might not see it the same.
I have one.
Okay, so I think we should do one thing that we really love and one thing that we would change or that we don't
Can't
necessarily.
we just do the hate one?
No.
I'm doing the hate. You know what I want? And I know the players want it. I want to get rid of that perfect salvage pop-up so bad.
You actually don't like pop-ups in general. So.
I generally don't like stuff getting in the way and interfering with my gameplay. But the perfect salvage one, it's going to be gone.
Can we get rid of the salvage one? Can we get rid of the titles? Is that too much to ask for? Like, I know that we've tried to get rid of the titles, and that's not been gotten rid of somehow because it can't be replicated by the devs. I don't know how it can't be replicated by the devs. It's really clear to me how it's replicated. You just switch between instances of game modes. So if you go to OPR, you're no longer on your server. You're on the between server for OPR, and then all those achievements pop up. Like, just disable the pop-up if you're in a cross-world instance, and then you just fix the bug. Like, it's not that hard. I don't get paid here, but like from this, but like that's how you need to fix the bug.
Can't wait.
I do feel for the devs though. They're trying their hands down. They're trying, but their hands are just tied. Yep.
I think that was super different.
That's the unfortunate part about
that I got from Brimstone Sands because it's so different from the rest of the world.
having people that are above you, but you kind of have to deal with it. I think they definitely could have executed better on what they had, but they're trying at least.
And that was, we have a quest line called Secret of the Spores. I would have held that back and waited until it was in a more exciting place for players and was like a really cool loop. Right now, I mean, not a lot of people do it, and I don't think a lot of people maybe understand what it is or why it would be interesting.
Yeah, I saw this when I was leveling up, and then saw that was a thing, and then ran by it, never touched it, and haven't touched it since. It definitely wasn't introduced at an ideal time. I know what she's talking about.
So I would have liked to hold that back and rework it.
I don't think it's rocket science from the devs to grab the top PvP companies and get them in a call to see what will make PvP / get more people. I could tell you this as someone that's not part of it. but there is an AGS exclusive thing for content creators that some people have gotten invited to. I will say this, it is, from what I have seen, it's mostly been PvE focused content creators, if not all PvE content creators, and they use feedback from that for the direction of the game as a whole. I do not know a single player that plays PvP that was invited to that. That being said, I don't know everyone that was invited to that because I'm not in it, and everyone that's in it is under NDA and is not allowed to talk about it. I'm only allowed to talk about it because I know people that have gotten invited to it, and they've messaged me if I'm in this, and if I'm in it or if it's a scam, because they think that I'm in it and I'm not in it. So it's kind of crazy how that works. But there is a spot where there is feedback that's given. I don't know if it's listened to. I don't know anything about it, basically, because all those people are under NDA, and once they sign, I basically can't hear anything from them anymore. But I hear about stuff before people sign.
So I'm excited for that.
Who are these
thing that
PvE content creators?
it's not
I
that
can't
like it
say,
is, but I feel like it
because
had a
that
lot
would
of potential
compromise their
to
NDA, and I would feel
mentioned
bad.
is, like the darkness portals,
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
all across the map. You know, we had grand plans for that
But
kind of
it's
stuff, and
not
things
too
have been
hard to
scaled
figure
back,
out. It's
and,
generally
like,
people
as a
with
player,
more
I would love
views,
for that to
especially
be
views on
like,
Twitch,
yeah.
because that's what Amazon's
Yeah.
affiliated with, right?
Yeah,
Amazon's
it's
affiliated
like
with
one of
Twitch,
the
so if
things
you
that
have better
we
Twitch
talked
numbers, you're more likely to get
all the
invited to
updates
those
again,
things, because
especially
Amazon,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, owns Twitch and
it
Google
really, like,
owns
fixed the
YouTube.
game. Like,
Yeah,
it's a
the added
different game than it was
cinematics.
2.5
Just
years
turned
ago.
on what's going
Gotta
on.
figure
We're
it out.
talking about the dev video now. We're about halfway through. The devs seem like they have content that's going to be coming in June. Very, very promising, but can't talk about it and are trying to convey their love of the game and like how much they want the game to succeed and how good it's going to be in June without talking about stuff as we watch the player numbers dwindle down and the rest of it. And for them, and maybe for some people who still have hope for this game, which I think is most of us if you're still playing at this point, that it is a seasonal thing and people will come back.
So when are we going to get large?
No one
server
has good
merges?
numbers on this game.
Maybe a
PvE
single
content
US
doesn't get
server
good
along with a
numbers.
single EU server, etc.
I mean,
So
yeah.
there's going to be a pretty aggressive merge happening.
I don't know. The PvE versus PvP stuff, you have two different audiences. You have to cater to both. It's not like Destiny 2 where everyone from PvP tends to like the PvE content and everyone from PvE tends to like the PvP content. That's like the only game I know that's kind of like that in terms of like raid-like or MMO-like games. But it definitely could be better in terms of the PvX. It feels like the PvE to me is a chore, and the PvEers PvP is a chore, and unfortunately that hasn't been found to be a super good balance yet. I think PvEing and OPR is a decent balance,
But hold on,
but not
none of us are aligned
perfect.
with one server in the US.
No, we're not. No, but there's going to be an aggressive merge happening on March 27th or around March.
And we have gotten these merges. The entirety of EU is being narrowed down to 2 servers. The entirety of NA is being narrowed down to 2 servers in terms of non-fresh start on West and East. Have those here in the Discord if you go to New World News, but we can see that here, I think, too. We can just like actually see what the merges are. But basically EU is going down to 2 servers, and NA East is going down to 2 servers. NA West is 1 server. Most other regions in the world, I believe, are 1 server plus fresh. miicrow, how old are you? I've literally leaked this on this stream. You can figure it out. You just gotta go watch the VOD. I'm not very old compared to people that play this game, for the most part.
Wombat Mount win.
No.
Despite the game's potential to be one of the best.
If their
MMOs,
free transfer
management of
system
the game
isn't
by the
good in
entire
shape,
team
the
is a
game will be in
continuation
huge
of
trouble
disappointments
soon.
And choices that
I feel
lead
bad
to
for people that are
belief.
starting a
Is
game
there
and trying to
anyone
get
who
into
can correct your
PvP.
mistakes? Or do you pretend nothing happened thinking that everything is fine?
We constantly self-evaluate. I think the difference is we just have.
Dude,
different
don't ask him that
information and we know
question.
where we're going. So why things may seem like, why aren't they focused on this?
It doesn't take a genius to look at this and just get sad. Like, you don't need to ask him this question, man. That's like a low blow. Like, anyone that's like, oh my god, our game peaked at top 10 in the Steam charts and is now sub 10k players. Like, the game is like basically at 1% or less than 1% of what it originally was at this point. And yeah, it's just, man,
right now.
it's a kind of a
Maybe the
low
reveal
blow.
will
Like, I
reveal
get it,
something
but
that
it's a
we're,
low
you know,
blow.
different that we're focusing on that you might think is important. We
Yeah.
try to, you know, we literally try to understand what the players want and need. We have to remember there's more players than just on Reddit or on Discord. Like that's
Low ball and cheap shot.
The vast majority. I
Yeah.
understand players are leaving the game, and there's reasons for that. But we are trying to do what we think is holistically best for the entire game.
And I think also like
Don't get
there's a lot
debated
of
with these
feedback we've gotten about,
questions.
like, how
Yeah, I try
we
not to
engage
read
with
into some of
players,
these
things
too
like
much.
that.
Some
This
of them have
particular
been better than
we,
others. This
you know,
one's
we
a
have
very poor
surveys,
question,
especially
in my
from
opinion.
players that aren't playing the game anymore. Like, what would we get them to come back? We have like actual telemetry of what players are doing in game, broken down by like different play styles and things like that. We have, you know, Discord, we have Reddit, we have like these things. So
If you're using Discord still as feedback and any dev is watching this video, know that a lot of the PvP players at this point have been banned from that have not only given really, really useful information about exploits and bugs, but then conveyed frustration in perhaps a poor way at some time and got permabanned. But it's an echo chamber at this point. And if you don't see it that way, I don't know what to tell you. But it's definitely a different vibe than you'll get in other communities within New World. And I would suggest, making a alias that is not affiliated with you at some point and go gray hat, whatever, and then go see some of these other communities if you want to see some real feedback. But it's definitely not for the faint of heart. You need thick skin.
we're pulling from a lot of different sources in addition to our own experiences.
Maybe there are devs listening to miicrow. Sometimes
Right,
it feels
that's not
like
to
it.
invalidate,
Most of the time
like,
it
what they're
does
saying,
not,
because
but
from
sometimes
their
it feels like it.
perspective, like Scott mentioned, like we've got
I don't blame them. My
additional
videos are very
information
long.
we're excited about, but they don't have that.
They're coming for you, Katie.
Uh-oh.
Please come
I
this way.
asked a
It's
good
marketing, I'm about
popular
to say
question that
something.
got ignored. I mean, that feels normal if it's an actual
know.
hard question.
I don't know.
So I was going to add one more thing. Like the one, thanks for pausing while I was, I want to add one more thing though, which is
The struggles with touching
not all features
grass.
cost the same. So some stuff you're asking for, you're like, oh, just do this or just do that. It might be really, really expensive, and we have to make ROI-based decisions. It's really important.
Yeah, they're looking for low-hanging fruit, right? The thing that I would put in consideration before he goes on is you also have to look at if something is low-hanging fruit, but someone's going to do it once and not do it ever again, does that matter? Like, I would argue it does not matter. Like, you want renewable content, and that's the entire basis of the game at this point, and how to get systems of the game to interact with each other and kind of encourage people to do game modes that are different without making it feel like a chore, which is an impossible task, but there's ways to make it better. And the more ways you can make the game feel whole in terms of its systems adding to some cohesive product, I think the better it will be.
We can't just if we could just do everything and everything cost the same, it would be the easiest job in the world. But it's not. It doesn't work that way.
Any upcoming region expansion plan for Asia server?
No.
Yeah.
Hold on, just pause. There's a funeral.
Oh my gosh, what is this?
Show this on the film. Get.
Yeah, welcome to the Bay Area.
What is this?
Might have found a mortar brigade for someone.
something really,
Is
really
Biden here? That's what I was thinking. Dude, I was thinking the same thing at the same time. That's so funny. Because this is what happens whenever a president comes to
But it's
visit
a parade of
somewhere.
cops. Some things are in our control and some things are out of our control.
About 1 year passed, maybe more, since cross-server
That
OPR
shut down
became
for
a thing.
Asia.
With that starting date,
Yeah.
we started having title
I
notifications
mean,
upon
they pulled
entering,
out.
exit. Now the same
Amazon
problem with
pulled out of
crossover
Korea
expeditions.
too.
Can we finally get this fixed?
Yeah, so this one was actually a kind of tough one to nail down, to be
Show
honest.
me
Can
what we go
finally
back
get
at this.
fixed?
Yeah, so this one was actually
Sorry,
Became a thing. With that starting date,
It's
we started
crossword
having
OPR,
title
yo.
notifications upon entering,
Yep.
exit. Now the same problem.
this
with
is what we've
crossover
been talking
expeditions.
about.
Can we
It
finally
also
get this
happens
fixed?
for
Yeah, so this
expeditions.
one was actually a kind of tough one to nail down, to be honest, because it didn't impact everybody. We talked about it in the last Q&A. We do believe that we have a fix for it coming out with season 5. So if it's still happening,
My God,
we are
please
incredibly sorry,
work.
and it'll probably happen to Scott again because he has been plagued by the pop-ups since day one.
It's horribly annoying, especially if you forget to put your stupid num lock and you don't F2 or your function lock and your F2 doesn't work and you get mad and yes. It's
He's
awful.
speaking from
Well, at least
experience.
Scott's trying.
But yes, so there is a fix that we believe in season 5.
Question. 6
You
months
would
later,
never
what
survive in
design
the Asian
decisions
gaming scene. Literally get
got
destroyed
right
on day
and wrong
one.
with the rise of
Yeah,
Angry Earth expansion,
but
and what did
I
you
don't know.
learn
It's a
from
different
this?
genre. It's a Western MMO.
Yeah, so I said one of the things I think we got right, and that was the artwork. I think we did that really well. There were some really interesting mechanics that we put into place for the elite chest areas that I think are interesting, but maybe not the best for that type of gameplay. So that's something that we're looking at in the future when we do implement.
Is it gameplay if you just auto run around, you sit in an entire Zerg because that's the best way to do it, and you hit one button over and over? Because that's the gameplay I get when I go in chest runs, and it's kind of cool to see a lot of people, but like, I don't know if I call it gameplay. It's kind of like experience is sort of on rails at a certain point.
That stuff.
Scott is secretly a supple player? What if that was Krelix this whole time?
Great job with mounts. I think that they feel really good. They look really cool. But
Don't
we had
insult me
heard internally
like that.
first, and then it was echoed in
Hey, Scott
India
tries
that
at
those
least.
world tours
You can
were
tell he
long,
tries.
and they felt bad, rightfully so, when you failed them by like a second or even a minute after you just spent 15 minutes with them. So we did make adjustments there. So it's definitely something that we're looking at for future content, is if we're expecting players to like give as much time.
I know we say this a lot. Like we give a lot of like hate, but it's like it's a love-hate thing, you know? Like if people didn't think the game could succeed, there would be no hate. If the game did not have potential, there would be no hate. If the game like wasn't good fundamentally right now, to a point where people are still playing it after 2 years with, to be honest, relatively minimal content release, there would be no hate. The game has hate because the game is good in some ways, and that's the side that I think you have to take when you're AGS, and it's hard. But like, people are just, not the best at conveying it in a civilized manner.
Time as those required, that we should make them just as rewarding as the time commitment.
I think I would add a few things. One, you already
Can't
touched on
criticize
something that went
games
wrong.
this
I
in
think some of the
depth
scores could have been better.
unless you have love
But I
for it.
think
Yeah,
the
pretty
things that were right
much.
in my perspective were, I think the leveling curve was pretty good. The time to
14
level was
died.
level. I think the changes we
Final
made to
Fantasy.
perks
Yep.
and some of the gear chase with the gear raising.
Like if this game was like, say this game was like FIFA 2023, like no one would care. We would just wait for FIFA 2024, and then we'd buy FIFA 2025. If it was like a COD game, like people care, but they don't care. It gets reskinned every year. Like it doesn't matter. But I don't know.
Overall was good. I know there were some problems. We missed the 625 stuff that you can still get.
Yeah.
But overall, like it felt.
Combat is the only thing that keeps me playing it. I mean, that's the thing that keeps me playing it, and a lot of people playing it.
I think
I
that
think.
was a good change. So I think there was some really good overall.
But also, like, the
I think there was some
MMO
things we
aspect's
missed.
pretty
Yeah,
cool.
expertise was that, I didn't mention that.
Like, it's
because
done
it wasn't
pretty
part of the
well.
expansion, but you're right, it came out at the exact, or it was taken away at the exact same time. Another one that kind of falls into that, where you didn't have to have the expansion to participate, were influence wars or influence races. Those
I actually have seen some people that don't have the expansion because the game goes on sale, but the expansion does not. And it's cool to see them run around. It just feels bad because they'll ask an area chat like, "Hey man, how do I get mounts?" And someone like sarcastically replies like -$40. Like it's just like, I don't think it was 40. I think it was closer to 20. But whatever the price is, like people, it's just like not super encouraging the new people. And I kind of wish the community was a little bit more open to that. Like, if I see a new player running around, I still run around and I give him gold. Like, every single time, because that's the thing I struggle with the most at the beginning. Like, I'll give him 5, 10K, like something to get him started.
I thought were a really great addition. I think that
Just be open to new
we were
people
trying to
because
recreate
the
this
game
moment
needs
that
to,
players had with
grow to
Great
live
Leave,
and not
when we
shrink.
first introduced the
Maybe.
reward track, and it was really cool, and we did do that. But it's one of those
Never
moments where
got
it's
gold
like, you
from
didn't go
miicrow
far enough.
Sag. Yeah, you gotta run
So
into
I
me in
think
the
we're
wild.
taking
That's kind of the
moving
hard part.
forward, making sure that we're not just addressing whatever like the fix is, whatever the thing is we want, but also trying to look around corners and look beyond that. I think that's one of the big lessons that we learned.
Yep.
Wish I
The
had
short term
another 3
versus
hours
long
to talk
term.
about that question
Stop
we
playing
just
because
talked
there
about.
isn't
I'm sure
much
there's a lot more.
Yeah.
gold left to make.
I want to ask one more.
Yeah, it's
Are you
definitely
able to
been
get some
less,
reassurance?
like in terms of people buying stuff. Like if you're selling consumes and stuff like that, that's a good market. But most people have the gear that they want, either from, well, unfortunately, they made gear easy to acquire, and that market is not as lucrative as it once was. And I know a lot of people played for that aspect.
About the continuation of New World for those of us who would like to see it live a long and
I
prosperous
run
life.
low level
Pretty
search
sure we want it to
expeditions
live
that they
as
ask.
long as you
That's
all want it to
awesome.
live. Like we're putting our heart and soul
That's
and
really
life into
nice of you.
this,
That's
and on top of playing it all those hours,
something
we're
I
working on it
don't
all
go
those
to
hours.
in
It's
terms of
really
lengths, but
important to us. So
I'm sure they appreciate that a lot.
we're going to do everything in our power to keep it here as long as we can, and that's our intention.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for bearing with us
The pain in his voice, but yeah.
through this ever so noisy outdoor game developer conference shoot. It was not just hard on you; it was hard on Chuck and Steve too. I can tell you that for sure. I'm looking at them holding their arms for a really long time.
It's hard on me too.
Noise was a bit much. Levin doesn't get any special
Pain in
thanks.
his eyes and sadness in his
Very
voice.
comfortable.
I am very.
I mean, I don't know, man. We've already talked about it. I don't want to go
We're gonna
back
try
and talk
something
about
new
it
here in
again.
about a week, which is a community. Our community manager is going to have a show where we talk about the state of the community. I hope you all check that out. It's really interesting. And
All right.
wish we could answer every question in the in-depth detail you want, and we will be able to if you consider June soon.
Also, to be honest, I know it's only been like 2 or 3 weeks, but I really miss Dave. Like, Dave actually like updated the game, even if it was like for worse or better in terms of balancing. That's like such a low-hanging fruit thing. Like, it doesn't have to be a significant balance change, but if it's something like, like just tweak the numbers a bit, like it, like, even though the game is flawed and the numbers don't matter as much as they should in some aspects, like, that would just make the game better. Like, you added in this, like, PvP scaling that affects every single PvP aspect. Like, if that actually got used a little bit more, that would be kind of cool. Even if he was wrong, it was still good. Wasn't there, like, 3 Daves? You know the Dave I'm talking about. I'm talking about OG Dave. The balanced Dave that was never supposed to be the balanced Dave. Is Dave the one that left to go work for Diablo 4? No, he's not. He didn't go to Diablo 4. He's still with New World, just on different teams, I think. Or he might be on Lord of the Rings. We don't really know for sure.